I went through an existential crisis starting in 1967 when I went to Alaska. I was 17 years old, and some of my, I was a bit of a know-it-all, and I thought I had all the answers. And the first thing that happened is that in the middle of winter we used to shoot pool down the hill there at the bars. Fairbanks is like a frontier town, Fairbanks, Alaska back then, and used to shoot pool. And I think I must have walked out to get some fresh air or something, walked on the side street, and came across this little new age bookstore. And I said, what's this? And I opened it up, and it was like 60 below zero outside, and it was nice and warm, and the smell of incense, and had all these books on UFOs and reincarnation and out-of-body experiences. And I just felt right at home, and I started reading. And so I got a really broad understanding right from the beginning, and I realized that I read books on both where people had contact with predatory extraterrestrials, abductees, and that sort of thing, but I also read books on contact cases where they had people involved themselves with extraterrestrials that were benevolent and were more advanced ethically and morally. And so I had a balanced understanding of that. And also I come from an ecological background. Herb Stoddard is one of the founders of ecology. He was a good friend of Aldo Leopold, and my dad was really the first real fire ecologist. And so I got an ecological background, so this all makes sense, of extraterrestrials, many different types of extraterrestrials, competing and cooperating amongst themselves. Even in nature, wolves cooperate amongst themselves to catch elk, and elk cooperate amongst themselves to quit not being eaten by wolves. And so I realized right off the bat that the old adage was true, as below, so above, that we're living in something kind of like a holographic universe, and if it's happening here, it's happening elsewhere in the universe, but on a much more expansive scale. And so by the 1980s, I had come to this understanding I was so far ahead of other people that I just kind of dropped out for a few years, and then got back in the 1990s. I went to Russia, lectured on UFOs in Russia in the early 90s and whatever, and then when the term exopolitics got coined about 13 years ago or whatever, I saw that some other people were catching up with me, and so I got back involved again in the new emerging field of exopolitics, which is very similar to how ecology emerged out of the natural sciences. My dad was an old museum collector, same for Herb Stoddard. These early ecologists were museum collectors. They were out in nature collecting animals and plants and whatever, and taking it to the taxonomists in the field museum like in Chicago. And they understood that these animals were in interaction with each other, and they had relationships amongst themselves, and the taxonomists just couldn't understand that. Dad used to argue with the taxonomists, and they say, well, show us a relationship. No such thing as a relationship. Therefore, ecology does not exist. And they never could convince some of these people. But the collectors who were out in the field saw these relationships. In the same way with the researchers and the people collecting UFO cases and contact cases, out in the field, they became intimately connected with these people and that are having these experiences, and then even having the experiences themselves. So we go from UFOs or ufology of chasing lights in the sky to actually thinking about different types of extraterrestrials and how they interact with each other. So it's really kind of the ecology of the universe in a way. So I can understand that easily, and so I've tried to get that out in the book because we have this division within the UFO community between those who think all extraterrestrials are bad and all extraterrestrials are good. The problem is these people just don't have a good background in ecology, or they would understand that it's not that simple, that basically in nature there's competition and cooperation going on in nature all the time, just like there is in our society. There are predator-prey relationships, not only just running through nature, they're running through our whole human society, and they just don't stop. Ecology just doesn't stop at the edge of space, and right. That's it. Just same way the laws of physics and laws of chemistry, they apply clean across the universe in the same way as the laws of ecology do. And even though Tall White said that the laws of economics apply across the universe. For instance, they trade with our military in order to supply their base there because it's cheaper to do that than shipping the materials to supply their base from their home star system. And so you have a lot of extraterrestrial trade.
So basically, trade is good business.
Yeah, so basically trade goes on. It's not just going on here with us. It's going on amongst extraterrestrials. And in this case, the tall whites gave us some technology. They're shuttlecrafts that we can travel to the moon and to Mars. They wouldn't give us the technology for the deep spacecraft, but they gave us the shuttle technology and whatever. It's related in great detail by Charles Hall. And these shuttles are propelled by coil windings and coils that are they're not like copper coils in which electrons run. They're like fiber optic coils in which different types of particles run, and the different kind of particle that runs through the coil determines a different kind of a field, whether it's a levitation field or a propulsion field or whatever. And he gets into this in a lot of detail. He's got 5 books out now. I've got the first 4.
And who is this again?
And his name's Charles Hall.
Okay, Charles Hall.
Charles Hall, and just type in Charles Hall tall whites, and you'll get quite a few interviews by him. But the books give a lot more detailed information, and so I'm very confident of this type of extraterrestrial. And it's not this pie in the sky. People get these ideas that they're here to save us, and they're somehow extremely, advanced and are here to save us and, from ourselves and all that. And they're not. The tall whites have their own agenda. They have their own motivations. They're a lot like us in a lot of respects, except they're much more emotional. They get much angrier, much quicker. A lot of us know people that get, emotions fluctuate wildly, where they're the same way. They can be very loving towards their family and their children, but they can kill you in a heartbeat if they feel threatened. And so their metabolism is much higher. So they can be extremely dangerous, but at the same time they can be extremely loving. And Charles Hall kind of got both sides of that, and they came to almost kill him once, and they became to really care and love him, and he began to care about them. And it was a difficult time in the 50s and then in the early 60s when Charles Hall became involved, because they thought of us as not much more than animals. And they had lifespans of 800, 1,000 years. So they were out there looking down on the wagon trains when they rolled out into the western United States. And one of them, the ambassador's daughter that Charles Hall was dealing with, was there at the time of when Madison was president. So they have long lifespans. They're autocratic. They look down on us because one of the main reasons the way we treat our children. They cannot believe how badly we treat our children. The children are our next generation. They're our future, and we're just horrible the way that we treat our children. And so you can understand why they had that perspective on us. So it's not, a lot of these people that are channeling, and whatever and whatnot, a lot of times there may be some reality to it, but often they're not. They're channeling their subconscious, and they're channeling their fantasies, and they're thinking they're describing fantasy extraterrestrials, not real extraterrestrials who are a lot like we are, even though they're more advanced and much more complex than what the fantasy extraterrestrials that channelers are often, coming up with.
Now, Charles James Hall, author of Millennial Hospitality, is who you're referring to?
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. And
I did a little checking while I was listening to you.
Yeah, and also the Open SETI website has got a good interview on it. It's called Open SETI, and they've got a good interview on Charles Hall. If you run down their homepage on the left, there's some interviews there. Also, the links are all in my book. I've had something like 169 links of, internet links all through my book to the cases. I don't just, talk off the cuff, without backing up what I say. So all these links, and these things that I'm talking about now and everything else, there's links to the source material in my book, right from the get-go. And what you do is in the book, there'll be a little footnote number, and you just click on that little number, and it'll take you right to the link to whatever subject is as a source link for that information.
Yeah, I think I saw some of those links during the part of the book that I did read. Now, do you think from your study and research that there has been an off and on effort to establish a one world government and one world religion coming from an ET source, or is that something that's being really done on a terrestrial level that's really being blamed on ET?
The ETs, the Greys seem to be involved in this. There are quite a few Greys working with the military. Bill Uhouse describes one that he worked with, on saucer simulators in the early 1960s. Elaine Douglas also had a case of some cases. And so the Greys have been involved with our global elite, trying to create this one world government in which the Greys would be on top, and then our elite would be next and on down in a kind of an autocratic fashion.
They'd be operating as sort of a shadow government.
Yeah, and so basically what you got is an extraterrestrial conflict going on between the different types of human extraterrestrials and particular types of Greys for the control over this planet. We got a lot of resources on this planet. We got a lot of human resources, and so you have these large mega populations, we call empires, so to speak, kind of like Star Wars, and we're kind of caught in the middle of it. But it's not one superpower just can't take over, like in our world. The United States or Russians or the Chinese can't just take over a small country in South America or in Afghanistan or whatever, because the other superpowers will counter that. And so it evolves down into covert operations where you covertly try to control other small countries. Like right now, covertly the Western powers are trying to have taken most of Eastern Europe back from the Russians, and they're trying to get the Ukraine, and now Russians are fighting back, in the Ukraine. But so the Western oligarchs are using, democracy and freedom and whatever as a mechanism in order to gain control over these European countries and like the Ukraine and whatever. And so, it's not a simple thing. You just, a superpower, no matter how powerful you are, you just can't waltz in and take another country because other superpowers won't allow it. And that's kind of what's happening. And that actually gives a small country a certain amount of autonomy. The problem is, if a small country is pretty stable and strong within its own self, it can balance these superpowers better. But if it's unstable or whatever, it becomes destabilized, then the superpowers create a lot of chaos in it, like in Syria, and in Ukraine now, and even now in Bosnia, that are along these fault lines between like the European Union and the Russian Union. And so it's like that on a much larger scale. And you have the Greys, trying to expand their turf, across in this area by taking over this planet in a covert way through our elite and whatever. And then you have the other types of human extraterrestrials and more advanced types sort of undermining that effort and sort of supporting those of us that are against that. And so it's kind of like we're in a battle zone. We're in a situation that's kind of like in the battle zone, and the battle zone kind of shifts back and forth, and it runs right through our own minds and our emotions and our feelings. And so a lot of the Bible, there's a lot of reality to the Bible, even though it was written a long time ago by people that had little understanding of high technology and whatever. But if you read the Bible carefully, you'll see that the extraterrestrials, human extraterrestrials, are very much involved, all through the Bible. They talk to Abraham by the trees of or whatever, and then a couple of them walked down to Sodom and Gomorrah, and dealt with Lot and whatever, and led Lot and his family out of before they destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And you'll see that through the Bible that God is human. He walks through the Garden of Eden. He
replace gods and angels with ET then.
Well, what's happening is there's this greater overall reality, this extraterrestrial reality, and back then the way to deal with populations was to make yourself out to be a god. And actually, apparently there was conflicts between the Anunnaki, and so and that's why it was said in the Bible, have no other gods before us. Don't believe in this God. Stick with me. And so there was apparently was fighting. The extraterrestrials were actually using humanity as proxy.
Which is why much of the Bible is all about my God's bigger than your God.
Yeah, and it's all so you got the poor humans that don't have a clue as to what's going on, and these extraterrestrials using us humans to fight their proxies across the planet. Their little battles, because the Anunnaki are not that advanced. They're a lot like we are. In fact, apparently we are a cross between our own natural evolutionary processes and some Anunnaki genes that were added and whatever. And that you get into stitching stuff, involved in all that, of actually trying to create a slave, what race that they could use as servants, but they were intelligent enough to be a good servant, but not so intelligent as to take them over. And so our whole history, there's been some suggestion that maybe be as many as 30 different types of extraterrestrial genes in our genetic makeup in this so-called junk DNA and whatever. And so we have very little understanding of who we really are and what our real backgrounds are. But there's some real information in the Garden of Eden study and Adam and Eve. But if you remember that Adam really means the first genetically modified human, because if you remember in the Bible it says is that when Cain killed Abel, he was excluded from the Garden of Eden, and he married from other people elsewhere. So there were other people elsewhere outside the Garden of Eden, and so that's even admitted to in the Bible. And the other thing was before Noah that humans lived to be 500, 600, 800 years old. So our normal lifespan is maybe up to 1,000 years, just like with the tall whites. But apparently we have been genetically engineered back down where it's 10% of that. And so that in order to better control us, and so we're kind of like the fruit flies of the galaxy, and so we've had to evolve over time because of our short lifespans. We're much more flexible and malleable than maybe some of the extraterrestrials that have longer lifespans. And so a lot of what's important in evolving our civilization until we get our larger lifespans back is that we need to be able to share information to our children and to the younger generation as most efficiently and as best as possible, so that they can pick up where we left off, and we can get to a point where we can extend our lifetimes to 800, 1,000 years is where we really should be. Because by the time I'm 65 years old now, by the time I'm 65 and I got a pretty good idea of what's going on, I'm going to die and have to start all back over again. And so we really need lifespans of about 1,000 years. Of course, we're going to have to be a lot better people to be able to handle that and to be happy for that many hundreds of years.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we've got 13 minutes remaining in the show, and once again, I'd like to go ahead and mention that if you want to learn more about Ed, you can go to his website at arthurs.exopedia, exopedia.org /Ed Marek, /index HTML. And would you give us that other website you was mentioning on Blogspot?
Okay. You've also got that on your homepage, I think, and the best thing probably is the blog's a lot easier. It's exopolitics.blogspot.com / or just type in Ed Marek onto the internet, and you should probably end up finding my blog and also the Extraterrestrial Cultural Center and all this other information. Same thing with Facebook. Just type my name into Facebook or type in Extraterrestrial Cultural Center into Facebook, and if you get the Extraterrestrial Cultural Center website, my book will be on that too.
Also, folks, I did have a guest lined up for this coming Saturday. It was actually Robert Foreman, and he was going to talk about his book, Enlightenment Ain't What It's Cracked Up to Be, which that title kind of caught my attention as being unusual already. However, he had a pregnancy in the family, and he had to attend to that, and it's going to be next week before he can come back. I don't know yet if I'm going to get another guest, if I'm going to do a solo, because I'm really thinking about doing a solo at this point, just haven't decided for sure, because I have so many new things going on my end that I would like to put out on the air and put into to YouTube so that everybody, not just the people listening here live right now, will hear and be able to know about, so they know what to expect that's coming up in the future. So I wanted to bring that up real quick. Also, if you want to purchase Ed's book, just scroll down below the chat room, below the show description. At the bottom of his description is a link to Amazon, or you can go to exopolitics.blogspot, like he was saying, and you can download a free copy there. Personally, I like to have a copy you can put on the bookshelf, you can share with friends and, things of that nature, but, everybody's got their own purposes.
Yeah, or they can start reading it, on the internet, and if they like it, then it's easier for them to read it as a book. Then you just go to Amazon and just type in the title, and the book will come up there.
Not to mention the fact that book would probably make a great birthday and Christmas gifts for some people that really enjoy reading this kind of material. Also, folks, I now have the means to get this show, the stream, added to some 200 odd apps, platforms through tunein.com, and amongst these is going to be iPhone, BlackBerry, Android, and iPad, amongst many others that I way too many to list right here and now, to make it easier for y'all to get to hear my show, even if you can't make it into the site. Personally, I'd love to see y'all come to the site, join up, sign up for the newsletter, and get into the chat room, and we could all have a little talk during the show. You could meet friends and, talk about things y'all got in common. But a lot of people don't have time to do that. But you can also start catching me every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, over at Revolution Radio at www.freedomslips.com, and I'll be there for 2 hours every Thursday in addition to this show. So catch me at both places if you get a chance. They have a chat room over there already plumb full of people as well, waiting to meet you, and they're already got a conversation going, ready for more people to get involved in it. So we'd love to have you at either or both places. Ed, is there anything you'd like to cover before the end of the show?
I think just that's the main thing is that people, not to let people get turned off, by the trash that's on the internet and whatever, and to really, take the time to really look up good, credible information. And I think my book is a good place for them to start, because not only is that they got the information in the book itself, you could spend weeks running through all the links that are connected to the specific information. So it cuts out a lot of the trash. I've tried to cut out as much of the trash in the field as I possibly can, and just get down to the nuggets rather than and mine through the ore for people. So just don't get discouraged. Even if you get scammed, once or twice or whatever, even the best of us, it happens to us sometimes and whatever, is that this is a really important subject. The future of mankind is dependent on which extraterrestrials we interact with and become involved with. And unfortunately, covertly, we're becoming involved with some of the types that we shouldn't be. And it's got easier to get involved with these types as it is to get out of it. It's just like building a relationship with somebody that turns bad. It's a lot easier to get into it than to get back out of it again.
Kind of like joining a gang.
Yeah, so you join a gang, or you join the CIA, it's hard to ever get back out of it again. And so this relationship with the Greys is not good. It's not a healthy thing for us, and our people should not have become involved with them. And apparently, what happened was back in the time of Eisenhower, the Nordics first met with President Eisenhower and his people, and the conditions were that they needed to stop the arms race and atomic weaponry and whatever, and they weren't willing to do that. And so the Nordics refused to become involved with us and left us to the Greys, who then the military cut deals with and kind of sold the abductees up the river, just like what happened in Africa. Is African kings and queens sold their own people to the white slavers and for iron pots and skillets and that sort of thing. And so it's the same thing's been done with the abductees. The abductees have been sold out, for technology, just the same as the elite in Africa sold out their people for technology.
So it's nothing new then.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, and so think that is as below, so above. So it's just a lot more complex, and people need to understand that that we as a society need to become involved with the more advanced extraterrestrials and leave these other types well enough alone. And so a lot's going to depend on how aware each person is and how much they understand about all this, so that they can make the right decisions to create a better future for humanity. And that's what I'm trying to do with this book, is to get what I've learned in this life out, at the end of my life, so that other people can build on this just like I've built on the good works of others.
Right. Okay. So then in that case, we're going to go ahead and call this one a wrap. I think we really could have done a lot longer a show with the kind of material here. I don't think we really feel like we got to cover, everything. Well, matter of fact, I know we didn't, because I know quite a bit about this area myself. But again, I got people waiting for me right now, so I couldn't continue at this moment. But we could do another show in the future if you're interested.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed it, and then glad to be of help to everybody, and hope they can get the book either free or otherwise.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being a guest, and would love to have you back on the show in the future. Everybody else, I want to thank y'all for listening. Couldn't have a show without my guest any more than I could have one without my listeners any more than I could have one without my guest, and I got tongue-tied on that one. So, y'all be good, and I'll hope to see y'all here this Saturday.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Okay, welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is Ed Kamerick. We're going to talk about his book, Ufos Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder, which I read some of the book, but I didn't get very far through it. Having said that, I kind of thought it was all considered as one book, but he was just telling me, if I understood him correctly, that this is broken down into sections like the UFO section, the exopolitics section, and the New World Order section, when I thought it was like a conglomeration. But at any rate, he's going to go in there and explain this a lot better than I'm able to. Before we go any further, I'd like to let everybody know that starting Thursday the 20th, I will be taking my show and doing a slot of it over at Revolution Radio every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time from 2 to 4. It's going to be a 2-hour slot. Would love to have you come over there and check out the show. I'm also getting the show, the stream of it, put into TuneIn. So it's going to put it out through iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, about 200 different applications. It's going to make it easier for you guys to listen to me on any kind of device you want to listen to me on almost. Pretty sure y'all are going to enjoy that. Now, if you want to learn more about Ed, you can go to his website, http://authors.exopedia, exopaedia.org /Ed Kamerick /index.html. And if I remember correctly, I think this is also the same URL that I downloaded his book at. So without any further ado, let's bring Ed into the show and get this whole thing started. Well, one more thing I forgot to mention also. Pardon me, folks. For those of you that would like to call in, the call-in number is 832-632-7904. And those of you listening at YouTube or somewhere else, you could catch me live at www.talknowradio.com. And I would love to have you in the chat room. So, Ed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a pleasure to have you here. I've been kind of looking forward to this show. I know I think each one of us had to postpone this show at least once for one reason or another that came up on both our ends.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember what happened or whatever, but if people want to get into the information, like the book link is good, and also they can go to exopolitics.blogspot.com / or they can just type in my name, Ed Komarek, Komarek, and then Exopolitics, and they'll probably get my blog. And if they get my blog, they'll get the book link to the book that people can read it for free on the internet, or they can order a hard copy if they want to from Amazon. But I made it free so that I can get it to the maximum number of people, not only just here in the United States, but around the world. It's got a translation button on it, so people in other languages can also read the book for free on its website. And also, I'm involved. That's kind of an extension of this book is what we call the Extraterrestrial Cultural Center, and it's etcenter.weebly.com. And so there's multiple ways that they can get in touch with me through these sites. And the book is basically the summation of my knowledge. I've written on a blog about 10 or 12 years, some over 200 plus articles on exopolitics, but I kind of wanted to pull it all together here towards the end of my life into a book that's easy reading and incorporates the most important material that I've become aware of in my 40 plus years of being in this field, and give people an understanding of what the overall picture here is with extraterrestrials, how many they're here, what they're doing, what are the motivations and agendas. And I have one chapter, for instance, just on the extraterrestrials called the tall whites that Charles Hall has talked about, or whatever. People can find this information on the internet really easy using their search engines.
Well, not to jump too far ahead, I got a question I didn't even have until I just now listened to you. When you said the tall whites that Charles Hall talked about, these wouldn't happen to be blonde hair or reddish hair, blue-eyed, tall Nordic types, would they?
No, that's a different. The Nordics are a different type. The tall whites have a base, according to Charles Hall, at Nellis Air Force Base. It's not at Area 51. It's up in the up near Tonopah, in part of the base, up in the mountains there. And it's basically a pit stop in which their craft don't warp space and time, so their travel is not instantaneously. That takes them, according to them, it takes them about a month to get here. And they usually just use this pit stop as to fix the craft or do maintenance and whatever as they move on to other star systems and whatever. But they're tall and they're thin, and their metabolic rate is much higher than we are, and they can run like about 30 miles an hour. And they are blonde haired, and I think they're blue eyed, but they're very thin. They can't really take temperatures under 80 degrees. They like warmer temperatures than what we're involved in. And the reason this particular group is so important to me, and I even went out there and found 2 more witnesses, is that we have a number of other witnesses that are credible, that back up Charles Hall's testimony. He's seen the tall whites in not only in the desert there, in the Spring Mountains and around Indian Springs, but they've also seen them in Las Vegas and some other cities that Charles Hall talks about. And I even found 2 or 3 more cases when I was over there researching whatever. So this is a case I'm fairly confident about. There's multiple other witnesses at which I put their accounts in the book in this chapter. Now, the Nordics are much more involved with us. They seem to be doing a lot of environmental research in my local area. There are some in my local area that I've dealt with contactees that have dealt with them, and one pair of brothers works mostly on mammals and animals, and there's a couple of sisters that work on plants. And that's just in my local area here north of Cairo, Georgia. I didn't see their particular craft, but I saw a related bunch that they're allied with. I did see their craft kind of edge on over a swamp, and one of the contact people took off down the swamp and met with them very briefly, and another contactee that I was with freaked out on me, and I had to deal with her and so I didn't actually get to see them, but I did see the craft in that situation. But you'll find that this book is way ahead of the curve for a lot of people, but I felt that it's important to get this information out to the public, and that as far as I can tell now, the military, from the sources that I list in the book, the military knows of maybe around 120 different types of extraterrestrials that come here.
Wow, last I heard it was 72, so that's been added to.
Yeah, well, it started with Clifford Stone way back in the 80s. It was something like 57 or something, and then it's steadily going up as the military gets more information on extraterrestrials, and it goes back and forth to some degree depending on how you categorize these extraterrestrials, as I explained in the book. So what we have overall, the big picture is we have that there's a lot of higher intelligence evolving, just like we're evolving off of our planet. Other top predators have evolved off of their planets, and they're just not here to save us, and they have their own special interests. Sometimes their interests can go along with ours, and sometimes they don't. And it's just like our Earth politics, but on a much more expansive level. So it's a complicated situation, and they're gradually making themselves known to us. But the more ethical, more advanced types just don't feel like we're quite ready yet to integrate into their reality. They still consider us very primitive, violent, brutal society, and we've got a lot of growing up to do. But it looks like it's going, in the next 20 years, it looks like there will be some more overt contact. But on the other hand, we also have a problem with the elites on this planet who are very threatened by these extraterrestrials because they're afraid of, especially the more advanced ethical ones and more advanced ones, that people would tend to side with them and against the elites that are in control of much of this planet. The bankers and a lot of the corporate people associated with the Bilderberg Group and whatever, who use money and the control of money in order to control the rest of society. Yeah, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all this. And so what happened was, way back, as I recount this in the book, way back in around 1953 or 54, the first Bilderberg meeting, they already knew, since the Roswell crash, their intelligence people, were all in our intelligence agencies and everything, so they knew that extraterrestrial reality was real, and they set about to protect themselves from by developing this cover-up, because they realized
protect themselves and we're on our own.
Yeah, because a lot of their industries, like the fossil fuels industry, would go the way of the gas light companies when the electric light bulb was invented. Just when the electric light bulb was just invented, the gas light company stocks went from $100 a share down to $1 a share, and they were still making money. And so it obliterated the gas company. Just the invention of the light bulb obliterated the gas companies. And so these technologies associated with how these craft fly and everything, the power supplies in these craft, make for very cheap, almost free energy. And this would put the whole fossil fuels industry out of business. And not only that, if you have a aerial craft that has electrogravitic systems and can float and fly through the air at very low cost, that put the whole automobile industry out of the business.
Not to mention anti-gravity.
Then it would put the whole infrastructure, roads, bridges, and the whole industry out of business. The whole infrastructure, all these construction companies that are involved in concrete and building roads and bridges and everything else. It completely revamped the whole medical industry. A lot of the drug industry would have to completely be revamped. So they set out right off the bat to protect themselves, and the way they protected themselves was to use intelligence agents like the CIA to build a wall of denial and ridicule around the subject in order to keep the public out of this while they exploited these technologies, and even developed relations apparently with like the Greys and even the Tall Whites, in which they traded technology involved in technology transfers and whatever. And I've got a chapter in my book on that. And Ben Rich, who's the head of the Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, said that we have, actually came out before he died and said we have the technology to take ET home, and that we got this technology from the extraterrestrials. And so not only are they suppressing, the technologies that would completely revolutionize, our planet and save our biosphere, they're also exploiting and making trillions of dollars exploiting these technologies, like Colonel Corso said in his book The Day After Roswell, and getting these technologies into the mainstream. That's why we're seeing a lot of the stuff that we saw on Star Trek and whatever way back in the 60s come to reality, like, the cell phones and stuff like that. And Corso said that he even got the idea from the transistor way back when Bell Labs was involved and whatever. So that they've also, so that means all these patents on all this high technology that we have nowadays are fraudulent, because they're not, they have been, the technology came from extraterrestrials and not from our own people, and from as written up in the patents. And so that's a whole nother thing. So they have a huge legal problem when this thing ever breaks, as to, of lawsuits involved in all this too. So it's a very complicated thing. And everybody knows there's a lot of trash on the internet, people faking and hoaxing pictures and dead alien bodies and all this kind of stuff, which just really trashes everything up. So what I wanted to do was kind of pull everything that I knew together, the best cases together, and the best whistleblower testimonies, the best contact cases together, to give people an overall picture of what's really going on, so they can make better decisions in their lives and take actions that are more appropriate for a better humanity and a better future for humanity than what we have at present.
Well, I can understand that, and the very fact that you're giving it away for those that can't afford it or just don't want to pay for it actually shows how important it is to you that this information gets out. And, I couldn't see why people wouldn't download it. It'd really make good sense to me just to go ahead and buy a copy, and you'd have it for classroom purposes and, meetings, conferences, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, it works out. Basically, first what I did is that when I first put it on for sale in hard copy and on Kindle, Kindle had 5 days out of every 3 months you can make it for free. So I got it to a lot of people that maybe ordinarily wouldn't buy it that way, than through the social networks. And then I think it was about 6 months ago or whatever, I decided that, a book had been out, I guess, a year and a half. I decided I just wanted to reach a lot more people. I've reached maybe 6,000 people. So I wanted to reach a lot more people. And so we put it up, for free on the website. And it's got something like over 12,600 hits over the last several months. And not all those people are reading the whole thing. So, but every time that I do a posting on Facebook, I post to Facebook, maybe 250 Facebook groups. I have about 1,500 more hits every month when I do that. So it's getting out to a lot of people, and because it is a good book and it's one of the best books, out there as far as to the overall picture of what's going on. And basically what's happening, like in the first chapter, I talk about evolution on other worlds, and that basically, if it hadn't have been for the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, we might have an intelligent dinosaur, instead of us here. And if that asteroid had been even worse and wiped out everything but the insects, we may very well have evolved an intelligent insect. So what nature does, and nature has certain strategies like endoskeletons and exoskeletons and whatever that work. And so, but what modifies these strategies that work for nature is these external impacts, both internal and external impacts like asteroids or internal stresses and whatever, that they wipe out one type of evolutionary direction, say endoskeletons, and leave it for exoskeletons. First it's if everything got wiped out but the insects, and so you involved an intelligent insect. So what we're seeing is very consistent with this idea, and that there are reptilian types. I've got a couple of cases of those in the book. Cherry Hinkle had a good case on a reptilian type down in the desert, down in an old mine. that our children encountered. You have insect types that are involved. Sometimes they call them praying mantis looking that are involved in abductions. You have a whole bunch of different types of human types, from very, very small up to huge giants. So that apparently the human race, what I call it is a human mega population. They did a whole chapter on the human mega population. Is apparently there's a huge humanity out there in space already that's been, and we're somehow linked to that. Into that, but we just are not aware of it yet at this time and whatever. And then there's what I call the gray collective, is another types of beings that are kind of spindly and involved in abductions, and some are and some aren't. And there seems to be some kind of a collision between these two mega societies, and we're kind of in the middle of that. And so, we live on a kind of apparently, from what I'd be able to tell, a kind of isolated part of the galaxy, a bit of a frontier, and a little bit out of the way, and so we're a little bit behind the ball as to what's going on in the rest of the universe, and we're still a young, evolving race. It's still very primitive and brutal and violent as we move out into space and whatever, but it's not unusual, if there's going to be top predators that evolve mostly on other planets, just like on this planet, and top predators aren't necessarily going to get along with each other right off the bat, and as they become more evolved and more intelligent, then you move beyond this predator-prey relationships like we have in nature and like we have in our mankind to more win-win solutions where extraterrestrials cooperate amongst themselves in order to get the resources that they need. But that's kind of what the big picture is. And as far as I've got a whole chapter on extraterrestrial warfare that goes all the way back to the Vedas in India back 9,000 years ago up to the present of extraterrestrial craft firing on each other and even shooting each other down and whatever. So I've got a whole chapter on that, and then I've got a chapter on the really big picture, which involves reincarnation and out-of-the-body experiences and this sort of thing, which is
that's unusual. A connection between ET and reincarnation, isn't it?
Yes, but because basically what's happening most people are kind of Earth-centric when they talk about reincarnation, of us evolving, and reincarnating on this planet over and over again. But what they really haven't thought about, that this isn't just happening on this planet; it's happening on other planets, and that there's this cross-fertilization where some people evolve on another planet and then incarnate on this planet, and vice versa. And so there's a lot of exchange reincarnational-wise, apparently, between ourselves and these extraterrestrials on other planets and whatever. So this is a whole much larger perspective than, say, what the Buddhists are involved in. The Buddhists are pretty much Earth-centric, but I'm talking about a really cosmic perspective here on reincarnation. And so that's a really big picture in which our material universe is embedded. And so I try to pull that all together, and hopefully I'll be able to do another book on enlightenment and this whole incarnational processes and whatever that derive from the book. But so basically, what I've tried to do is give the best whistleblower testimonies and the best contact cases that I'm aware of and that I found in the last 40 years, and put them all together in a tightly, well-edited, written book. And so that's what I've done, and I really appreciate it. What I am today is in large part based on building on the good works of others. I just noticed I was cleaning out some UFO books out of my cabin here the other day, and I've got hundreds and maybe even thousands of books that I've read since I was, a young man. On UFOs and other subjects and whatever, and so it's made a big leap forward for me. All these other works that I've been able to build on, and so I felt that I should give back and try to pull everything that I knew on the subject and give it especially to the younger generation to build on, so that they wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of this.
Right. Everything in one nice, closely knit place, easy to get to, without having thousands of books strewn everywhere.
Yeah, and also cut through a lot of the trash, because there's so much trash on the internet. The viral marketing has just gone nuts, and so anything that they can think of, they create a fake body or create, fake, Photoshop pictures and whatever, just to get as many hits as they can on their site and whatever in order to make money. And so it's just, we've been flooded with this viral marketing, along with the usual hoaxsters and frauds and people that are in it for every other reason but the truth. And so,
like the sensationalists that blow the New World Order ET connection out of proportion.
Yeah, and it's full of disinformation. Just like they came out. This one Socia or whatever came out with about the tall whites. Now that Paul Hellyer, who used to be the defense minister of in Canada, came out and was on Russia Today talking about the tall whites. And what happens is, what Paul does, he comes out and talks about the tall whites and makes up this bullshit article, and it gets picked up by the Iranian news agency. And then all the, United States, the Washington Post and everything else say, ha, what a bunch of bull, And so people fall for this trash. And Snowden didn't have anything to say about this subject yet or whatever, but he quotes Snowden, which is all just fabricated, and it gets millions of people, millions and millions of people hear about this, and they see that it's trash, and it turns people off. And the Weekly World News has been doing this for decades, and they're founded by intelligence people, and they create these trash articles, of Hillary Clinton holding an alien baby and all this kind of stuff. And any scientist who walks by a supermarket checkout counter and sees that gets turned off on the subject. It really works. It closes people's minds down. And so it gets down to, how do you tell a counterfeit $20 bill from a real dollar bill? Well, it takes an expert, and even experts can be fooled sometimes. But so what I've tried to do is to mine through all the ore and get the gold nuggets and put as much of the gold nuggets as I could together for people to build on, and so that they don't get, and hopefully they read me before they read a lot of this other trash, so they don't get discouraged and get taken in or scammed by somebody, and then throw the baby out with the bathwater and get out of the subject completely, which is not good at all.
I know. I've read a bunch of material on this, and the stories vary widely, and I don't think there's any place where misinformation is more prevalent than it is on the internet, even more so than it is in the bookstore. Yeah,
and the thing is the way to take down an autocracy is you go after the leaders, but the way to take down a network is you flood it with trash. And so the internet networks are being flooded with this trash, and a lot of it. Some of it is government intelligence agencies running disinformation operations on the public, and propaganda to the public. A lot of it is just people trying to make money by fooling and scamming other people, in this and other areas too.
Trying to sell sensationalism.
Yeah, since if it's got a sensationalistic headline, it's probably a fraud. It's trying to get your attention, get you to click on the site so that they can make a buck for every click that they get on their site or whatever by somebody. And these
proof of aliens found at Roswell. Look out.
Yeah. And so they actually, a lot of these people actually are making a living conning people, faking pictures and faking alien bodies and stuff. And they can get 1 million hits on a fake alien body or something like that. Probably rake in $10,000 or $20,000. So so you got these new age sirens, that call people in onto the rocks and then devour them and destroy their ability to understand what's going on. And so the reason that I'm so passionate about this book is that I want to, I don't want to have to keep, you can't keep fighting these people. The best thing I can do is just try to get the most credible cases and credible information as I can out to the public, and mostly I have to do it through the social networks. Is where I operate mostly on Facebook. People looking me up on Facebook, Ed Kamarick, and but unfortunately I've got like 5,000 friends already, so I can squeak people in every once in a while, but they can click the follow button, and so they can get the posts that I post on my wall, which is a lot of UFO information, New World Order information, NSA, Snowden information, this sort of stuff. And also we have the Extraterrestrial Cultural Center Facebook page, and you can just type in Extraterrestrial Cultural Center, and you'll get our Facebook page, and you can join that. And I'll put some posts on that as well as other people on that. And that idea sort of derived from a book. Once you understand that we're dealing with a lot of different extraterrestrial races, and some of these extraterrestrial races are very advanced, and they do, not only looking out for their own interests, but they also are interested in looking out for our interests, and those types we need to become more involved in. And so I came up with this idea of Extraterrestrial Cultural Center when I'd heard that Wendell Stevens, a researcher in the contact cases or whatever, an extraterrestrial told him something about starting a cultural center, and that kind of clicked in my mind after I'd got this book out and promoted this book and actually made it free. Then all of a sudden I thought, I was just going to ride now and, take it easy now that my book was out, everything else. But then this whole concept of the Extraterrestrial Cultural Center formed in my mind, and I put that into a website. The whole business plan and everything is there as a way for humans to begin to interact more and more with extraterrestrials and in extraterrestrial reality. Every little town, city, whatever, they all have cultural centers. So why not have a cultural center for, to interact in a positive way with extraterrestrial races? And so I've been pushing that concept lately. And it's on etculturalcenter.weebly.com, I think. Or you can just look up Extraterrestrial Cultural Center on the internet, and you should come up with that website. But like I say, we also have a Facebook page, and you can just look up Extraterrestrial Cultural Center, and you can get our Facebook page there.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this here. Was there a point in time during your research or whatever that you perhaps thought all ET was the bad guys, and you maybe changed your mind, and now there may be some good and some bad?
It started with me, my whole quest,